Unless unless John or Beth, you feel differently, I would suggest we get started. Is that okay?
That's good. Let me just bring people up to date in the room. Welcome.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This meeting came from a discussion at the Suttons Bay Congregational Church's mission team. And what it was is learning more about this opportunity. It's been created by John at Homestretch. And really a desire for us to look at opportunities of efforts that we believe are needs in the community. So I'd reached out to John, and there were questions that our missions team wanted to have. And so they asked John to come and speak to us, as well as Beth, to really talk about, well, what is the unmet need and how big is that need? And when I started talking to people, there are people actually interested in this from the business side as well. So we had invited a number of people associated with businesses as well as other churches. And so the thought is the meeting kind of spread and expanded, but we are taping it today. And so that hopefully we can share it afterwards, given that we've had some AV issues here this afternoon, which I apologize for. So with that, what I'd like to do is the following. I'd like to take about 10 minutes in which Beth is going to speak regarding, do we have a housing problem and why? I think it's been in the press a lot, but I think it'd be helpful to hear Beth's expertise. Then we'll have about 30 minutes or 40 minutes of John presenting what this solution is. So here's the problem, and here's one potential solution. We would all agree that there's not a single solution that's going to address affordable housing, workforce housing in our community. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. This is one that he's presenting. And then I'll try to moderate a discussion in terms of Q&A at the end. So you'll have lots of chances. I'd ask you kind of hold off until after each speaker speaks, and then we'll go through questions as we go. So with that, Beth, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Phil and John, for organizing this outreach effort. It's definitely more and more important to just reach out across our various communities. And I am speaking from California, different version of more sunshine. And sorry to not have been more ready. The single slide that I was going to share, it would have been the same one that I shared in presenting some of this data to the Board of Commissioners in early January in particular. And what it does is present a really important set of metrics that underscores how extensive our sort of in need families and households are in Leelanau County. Just to give a sense of the broader economic circumstances and challenges with housing, underscoring how housing is such a key component in that. And these overall metrics, what would have been on the screen is first, the simple big picture. The metrics are called ALICE, like the name Alice, ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And what they show is that Leelanau, 43% of Leelanau County's households are either at the federal poverty house level or under the ALICE household survival budget. And the word survival is also important in that. I'll circle back to that. So federal poverty level in our county is under 7%. And that's often a number thrown out without people really understanding how little that does to capture the reality. And as a couple of, and overall, it's because that threshold that was created in the 60s doesn't capture household necessities and cost of living increases. as a general way of phrasing that. And it's why you hear, maybe some of you at least hear, a couple of things that will be different. A lot of programs, including the federal government or nonprofits, use percentages of those thresholds. So a common one will be 300%. And during the pandemic, a lot of programs would say 400% of the federal poverty level, which means they're expanding the threshold below which they're going to say people qualify for assistance programs. Another one you'll hear is the housing. HUD developed the area median income and developed that at sub-state levels to sort of capture more and more local realities. So the big picture is indeed that and only growing and growing concerns about the number of households in our county that are really struggling to make ends meet. That's really what the bottom is. Was someone coming in, or should I just keep talking?
Continue, please.
Okay. And so I just, and if any of you are economists, some of the big picture things you hear about is wage stagnation. That actually for decades we have had wage stagnation, which hasn't caught to pace with cost of living, let alone, current inflation situations. And another kind of data point I would refer to is during the pandemic, there has been a lot of wage increase and news coverage that wages have increased. But actually, the Department of Labor a couple of months ago completed analysis that compared to inflation, real wages had actually decreased again 1%. So things are still not keeping up. Another quick thing to point out that okay, sorry, something happened with being muted and I could get unmuted. The township range, so that Alice for the county being at 37%, 43%, the differences range from, at a township by township basis, range from 26% to 52%. So Glen Arbor is at 26% and Casson at 52%. Leelanau Township is at 50%. So you can also unpack this data at a township level and really look at where the greatest needs are. So I think certainly a lot of us are from the northern part of the county in terms of looking at these needs. So that the chart that would have been up on a screen would have shown this household survival budget for different types of households: a single adult with one child, 2 adults with 2 school-age children, 2 adults both working in all of these situations, with preschool, so under 5 children needing childcare, and seniors, 2 seniors. And at a big picture level, for example, this household survival budget in terms of looking at these local costs, if you were 2 people working household with 2 children in school, any K-12 age school range, in our county, you need a more than 50% annual salary between the 2 of you, or the equivalent hourly wage of $27 an hour. So just to put into picture, when all of the talk was going on about a $15 minimum wage federally, that is what it would take in our county for 2 people both making that to make this household survival budget work. And yet on the other hand, even this data is always behind the real story, because it's always looking backwards in terms of gathering data and analyzing it and presenting it. And so actually it'll be interesting in the next few months. There will able to be, from the 2020 census and other things during the pandemic, I'm really looking forward to seeing some updated figures, because a lot of these figures are 2, if not 3 years old and pre-pandemic. But to just move on to the housing equation, this household survival budget, sorry, just to back up one step, the household survival budget just captures basics, a category for housing, transportation, childcare, if that's in there. Of course, for some households, that's zero. Food, of course, just a basic cell phone plan in terms of technology bills and very little, kind of miscellaneous expenses. It leaves no room for emergencies. It leaves no room for a $500 car repair payment you can't afford, for having a health issue where your deductibles, let alone copays, kicked in and you can't afford those. Any of those kinds of situations, this leaves no room for that, let alone savings. Which is a lot of where you hear about the kind of always carrying through debt to leverage things to the next scene. This budget for Leelanau County, the household survival budget, the monthly housing amount in that only ranges from $616 to $779. So that entire range for those types of households means under $800 is allowed for your monthly housing cost, whatever that scenario is. Compare that to one of the most recent comparators I could find for that is a survey by Housing North, which surveys employers and employees and then presents what their reality is of what the average rent or monthly payment is, which in a survey more than a year old now, that survey showed it as being $1,257. So really staying under $1,300 a month, which just really shows the reality that isn't even captured by these more expanded metrics and helping us see the extent of the need and what a big component addressing missing middle and affordable housing can be as part of that. Another important last figure that the Housing North data show in terms of our county's real disproportionate need on housing is a figure that's called the home value ratio on to income. So you hear figures like you should only spend 30% of your income on housing. That's a common figure you'll hear as a ratio that comes out to a recommended ratio of 2.6. That reality in Leelanau recently was 4.6. So we're really one of the most out of proportion counties actually in the country in terms of really needing any steps towards filling our missing middle and affordable, attainable housing needs. I'll stop there.
Well, Beth, thank you so much. I'm sorry my computer shut down and I got back, but I've heard it many, many times and I'm sure fabulous. I'm going to go back and look at it. I do want to iterate one thing, okay? And that is, I used to think of affordable housing as for those who are homeless. In Leelanau County, what she's indicating is this is not just for the homeless, although there are people who literally need service, who need to be worked. This is our workforce. So if you go to the library and you want to get a book, those people, if it's a single person with a family, they're Alice. They cannot afford to live here. And we lost Cora, a woman named Cora, in the Northport Library for this reason, a cost of housing. If you want to go to the grocery store and buy food, the people who restock the shelves at night are Alice. I can guarantee you, unless they're living in housing that they've inherited, or they're living far away, which some people commute from Traverse City up to Northport to work. But when they can get a better job, they're going to quit commuting. If you go to a dentist and you get your teeth cleaned, that person, usually a woman, maybe a single mom, is Alice. And so I think we need to start looking from an employer standpoint, as well as from a community standpoint, that because of our high cost of living, this impacts all of us. directly. And finally, just from a standpoint of our social economic fabric, to me, it's so much richer when we have a variety of different types of people in our community from all different social economic needs. So that's my pitch to you, education over the last year, that this is broader than just, oh, it's homeless people. Yes, it's veterans. It's people who want to work. It's people coming out of college. It's people who clean our teeth and clean our homes and stock our grocery shelves. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John. And John, talk to us about one solution that is so close to being able to put shovels in the ground, and tell us about, again, the Vineyard effort.
Will do. Can you hear me?
Please, I can hear you.
Okay, so, go to slideshow. Is that right, Leah? Okay. So, Homestretch was founded in 1996.
John, can I interrupt one thing, if you could?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was trying to speak and it was on mute. I'm going to ask everybody if you could do me a favor. As things pop into your head as John goes through his presentation, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, it says chat. Okay? Throw a comment in there, not to respond while John is talking, but that way we have a series of things that come up on top of mind that we will talk through to say, hey, this is a concern you have, this is a question you have, etc. And we'll be able to jump right into the Q&A. John, is that okay?
That sounds great. So if you can monitor it, because I'm going to be concentrating on my slide deck and going back and forth.
I will be glad to monitor it, and then I will facilitate it at the end.
Good. You know, it's interesting because what Beth was talking about today and maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, it's the same thing was. As I said, you know, it's an ongoing problem. We're trying to mitigate it. We've spent, gonna say, a little over almost $20 million since 1996 providing units in the Grand Traverse region. That's helped a lot of people. I think we can count up to about 170 folks that families that we've actually helped get out of this condition where they're housing overburdened. There's a lot of models. We do a for sale product or we do a rental. Right now, I'm focusing on rental product because it seems to be the fastest way to get housing out there in multiple numbers. And that's important because the need is just pent up so much. We can't put enough out there, and the rental housing seems to do that on the multifamily level. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a market study demand. I'm going to show some demographics internally with Homestretch. We're going to go over the solution, at least for this locale, which is our apartments building, Vineyard View, and then we'll show some floor plans and modular construction, and then a little bit of a talk about what we do with youth training. And before I go any further, Leah here is our property manager. Leah Pillsbury works for Homestretch. She's been with us for about 2 weeks. And Melissa, she has been here since 1996 and is our bookkeeper. And we have another office personnel that does our construction drawings because we are a general contractor as well. So, you know, everyone says, well, AMI, 20%, 80%, 120, what does that mean? How does that break down? And really the best way to show this slide, Leah and I pulled this up today out of another presentation that we had seen. You've got the 0 to 30%, which is eligible for what you call public benefits through housing choice vouchers, project-based vouchers. If you've heard of vouchers before, those are eligible to people that make less than 30% area median income. So you see a person getting a voucher that makes 50% AMI. You only see it 30% less. 30 to 60% would be those that are eligible for low-income housing tax credit projects. LIHTC or LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, they're a bear to do. You've got to have 50 or 60 units in a complex to justify the cost of getting tax credits from the state. It's a 15-year monitoring period. That is a product that we've only done once in our 10 years. So we're going to talk mostly about conventional type of financing, not low-income housing tax credit, but that's a category that's available to other developers. 60 to 80% AMI. Community development block grants or home funded units, that's a big portion of where Homestretch gets its money. We are getting money from Michigan State Housing Development Authority on a regular basis. And then beyond that, from 80 to 120% AMI, those really aren't eligible for assistance, but they do help us in certain degrees to offset the cost of the affordable housing at the lower spectrum. And there is an effort to try to blend those spectrums together from 50 to 60 to 80% to 100% AMI. It does make sense to blend those, so you're not just 100%, 30 or 50% AMI households in one building. So that's that. I just wanted you to see a little bit of a breakdown of when we talk about AMI, how that makes sense in the lending world. Here's another demographic that we saw over the years. The median household income has risen at a slower rate than the median home price. And it's just a widening gap, and it's continuing over time such that we can't keep up with the housing and make it affordable for people as their income has increased over the years. So it's a battle. This demonstrates that demographic. We did a market study for this development. This is an 8-unit apartment complex at the top of M204 overlooking 9 Bean Road. And our own market study identified in this bracket of AMI from 0 to 30%, we had 20 units. From up to 50%, we had 49, and then 80%, we had 158. But look in the third column with section 8, that has 244 units that are in demand. And I think that speaks to what Beth was saying earlier, that there's just this bubble of people that are stuck below the 80%, and they haven't got a place to find themselves. But this was borne out by demographic data that is old. It's census data, and that's what our market analyst uses. But I'm gonna go to the next slide and just let you know that in our approved portfolio of applicants right now, these are actual people. We have 2 adults with 9 minors that are under 20 years old. We have 21 applicants from the age of 20 to 50 and 16 applicants which are 50 years and older. So that paints an actual real picture, and these are approved applicants. And to get to these approved applicants, I'd say there's probably another equal amount that we have either turned down or didn't accept an application for. So there's only so many people that we can help, and they have to have an income. We ask them, what is your employment? How many people are in your household? From that, then we decide, do they have enough to afford that $700, $800, $900 a month apartment? And if they don't make, say, $1,800, $2,000 per month, they normally aren't going to get into one of our programs because we don't have project-based vouchers. Now, if somebody had income less than that amount and they had a housing choice voucher, then we could house them, because the housing choice voucher does pay for the difference between the rent that we require and what the applicant can pay. So for an example would be, if they're making $1,000 a month, then the voucher would pay the rent up to 30% of that $1,000, which is what the applicant would pay. So they would pay $300. It's a beautiful program and it worked well for us. That is where we would say, okay, we'll accept your application, even though you don't make $1,800, $2,000 a year. And that happens quite often, actually. Oh, good. It's not on my screen. Bill, can you let them in?
I can try. I don't see that my ability to do that, but let me. Request. I don't believe I have the control to do that.
Gary. Yeah.
No, I do not have the ability to let people in. You own that, I believe.
Um, back to, we have our PowerPoint.
And also, I think as we get back into this, I think we've clearly hit the points that there is a need and there's a population need. I think we need to jump into the solution. John, if we could.
I understand. I will do that as soon as I get us back up and running.
All right.
Okay, have you seen the slides then? Are we back on track?
We are back on track. We can see the slides. You're moving through them
Okay,
on the pie chart.
yep. So pie chart shows that we have more single adults in our application process and family members. So those really are the people that we're trying to serve. Those are the applicants that we have. We recognize that. So we said, well, instead of 1 bedrooms, let's build 2 bedrooms because we can take care of both of those categories. Here's the rents that we're going to receive on the 8 units called Vineyard View. You can see the rents on the right-hand side. They're allowable rents from $533 a month all the way up to $1,642 a month. Notice the 80% at $1,642 is quite high. I really doubt we're going to be able to get that rent. That is the allowable rent, though, that we could charge based on AMI standards published by HUD or the federal government. So, yeah, we'll just leave him, poor guy. Anyway, we have adjusted those rents and we have an income balance that we do so that we are actually not charging that 1642 or the 1422. We've come up with a blended rate that is closer to $1,200 a month for the 80% units, but we do honor the 50, the 30, and the 533, 30% AMI rents. But basically, our projected annual revenue is about $78,000 per year. Of that $78,000, we have to take away the vacancy rate, the vacancy loss. We have management fees. We have some common electricity for the site. We have sewer. We're going to have private sewer on this property. But operating and maintenance, you can see down the line that overall we have about $5,000 per year per unit of operating expenses, and that filters down to us to being able to garner a loan. Go back to that loan shows permanent financing of $410,000. The estimated land value that we had from donated to us from the land bank is about $60,000. Here's the parcel. It has 2.6 acres. Again, I said it's at the top of M204 on Marek Road. Here's the site plan. It lays out with the 8 units. There's 2 4-unit buildings. The end units where you see that little pop out is the units that will have the 3rd bedroom. It's a 1-story 3rd bedroom with a full bath. So here's the nuts and bolts. We need to come up with $1.743 million. That's the total development cost. Only 70% of that capital can be donated and 30% has to be permanent debt. So I like to say when you go for a mortgage on your own home, you typically would put down 20% and you get an 80% mortgage. You flip that upside down. In our case, we have to put down 80%. We can only afford 20% mortgage. It's a tough reality, but that's the way affordable housing has to be structured because your revenue, your rents are low. You cannot support a lot of debt. We have raised $417,300 to date, and that's hard capital put in the bank, ready to go in our equity stack. Here's the total development cost. You can see the permanent financing at the top that we talked about on that other page after we took out the expenses. MISTA has granted $200,000 to the project. We have another grant for $400,000 from the Federal Home Loan Bank. That award was significant. It's a very tough award to get. We have that 411,000 bank capital from donations. And then we just received on Monday, 125,000 from Leona County Board of Commissioners. So right now we're at 147,345 outstanding fundraising needed. And that as of today. Homestretch has 42,500 approximately of equity, hard cash into the project. That's for our due diligence, soil borings, architectural, all those costs that you have to do for pre-development. So we're at about 217,877 per unit, and we're almost there to solving this puzzle to put this development together. Here's a breakdown of our use of funds. The land is $1,500. It's basically the cost to perform a closing through the title company. Pretty simple. Usually that's 60,000. We would have to raise that if we were to pay for that, but under the donation from the land bank, that avoided that. Construction hard costs, 1.362 million. That in itself right there is a palatable amount to come up with, but you got to realize there's other soft costs, and that's what a lot of people don't think of. You know, they say, well, what's the cost per square foot? It's hard to calculate that when you take into consideration all of the other additional costs, and you can see the professional fees, environmental studies, rent-up allowance, compliance measures, operating and replacement reserves, and then of course we've got to get paid. And we could actually be up to $250,000 of developer fee to Homestretch, but we've lowered that. And it's a dangerous thing to do if you're a developer, because you got to keep your doors open. But we have the benefit of being the general contractor. So there's an additional amount of money on the general contracting side that we can get into our business because we do the contracting. So between the two, we can make it work and cover our costs and keep Melissa and Leah paid. Very important. There's the total, 1.743 million. The site has approved site plan and PUD zoning. They did a planned unit development. We have an approved pilot. So the township is actually bought into the development. They're taking less tax revenue because it is affordable housing. That's approved. We have well and septic. The site has perks so that we can put in a private system. There is no city sewer or water up the hill there to Marek Road. And that actually I'm promoting as a benefit. Even though Homestretch has to pay to install it, we'll be the owner, the operator, but the tenants won't have to pay that $110, $115, $120 a month sewer and water bill. We'll have a maintenance fee that will internally have a set aside, so it won't really affect the tenants, but that to me is a benefit. So private septic and well will be a bonus on this site. The land has been committed to Homestretch with the understanding that we have a 20-year affordability period. So this pro forma that we put together, these rents, they cannot be converted over to a market rate rent. We cannot flip this property. We have to stay with that compliance of 20 years of affordable rents. And they may not be the people that are going to monitor it, but I mentioned that $400,000 loan from the federal government. They will monitor it. They will look at our rents. They will look at the income of all of our tenants on an annual basis. So we'll have to turn into them a verification of our tenants' income and the rents that they are paying. One thing that I don't think I mentioned yet in the slide deck is we don't have the ability to bring on natural gas to the site. So we don't have a fuel like you normally would, or we could bring in LPG, liquid gas, but that could be cumbersome. Having tanks on the site, having them filled all the time for all the tenants, and then dividing it up properly for each one with a meter makes it a little bit of a logistic nightmare. So we decided we'd go 100% electric. We'd do a super insulated structure, and the answer to that is the high performance building systems by Porter Panels. This is an engineered product. It was built, or it was designed back in the 30s by Dow Chemical. It's been around for a long time. Porter Panels, where we get our supply from, is in Holland, Michigan, and they're glad to provide the product. This fit the MISHTA modular, and modular meaning a hybrid construction, where it's in a factory setting brought to the site. That met their criteria. So I've used these in the past. We're using them in honor on the project. And so far it's worked out pretty good as far as an assembly is gone. The blue line represents the shell. This is the blueprint for this development and the honor project, which is the same. But that blue line gives us the idea what the shell of the building is going to be enveloped in with those porter panels to make these units very energy efficient. They have to be efficient simply because they're going to be electric, and we don't want to burden our tenants with a high electric bill. There's an exterior elevation of the shell showing the window locations. This is an actual panel drawing of the honor project. There's the rear elevation. Everybody on the rear has a access door. That's a kitchen window, and they do have a 12 by 16 patio, concrete patio out the back. As I said, though, carbon neutral, 100% electric, private well and septic. Because of the porter panels, and we're trying to make these as airtight as possible, we will try to set that passive house concept in motion here. I think we can achieve it. Our test is in honor right now. So if we can do it in honor, I know we can do it here on Marek Road. Time will tell, but we're pretty close to achieving that in honor. And if they have to make adjustments from one development to the other, we shall. There is a call for rooftop solar arrays. Some folks think that we could supplement that electric power with a solar array. That's going to require some other grants, and we'll work on that. It's not mandatory that we use it on this, but it's something that will help. It'll help the tenants if we can pull that off. ERV, energy recovery ventilation, is important on these airtight structures. So we are going to have an apparatus that exchanges the air from the outdoors to the indoors while actually taking the heat that's going outside, bringing it back in. That speaks to indoor air quality, which is really important. We'll use an air source heat pump. It'll have air conditioning and heat, so and hot water. So we're really pushing this concept for electric, off the grid, carbon neutral. There's the panels coming to the honor site. They're prepackaged on a semi. There they are in the parking lot, ready to be erected. There they are on the first ground floor, ready to go up. There's a firewall between each unit, which is stick built. And those are panelized and brought to the site. But I wanted to point out that there's the panels themselves. They're a foam core, solid foam all the way around the whole exterior shell. Very airtight and energy efficient and quiet too. So if you have a building that's along the roadway and has road noise, these are actually sound deadening, which is another benefit. There is the rough framing right now. This was taken about a week ago in honor. This is an exact duplicate of what Marek Road would look like in the rough framing stage. And there's a concept rendition of Marek Road with the 2 4-unit buildings, parking lot up in the front. And it sits atop a hill and it has a view of the vineyard. So I think it's a wonderful setting for people if they're going to live in this complex. There is a little bit of road noise, believe it or not. If you sat on the site, you hear the road noise from Marek Road during the day. Panels will help that. I think it's going to be situated so that it will mitigate some of that, but it's a lovely wooded setting. And then lastly, we're not just trying to build homes for people to live in. We're actually trying to help the people that will be building it by promoting youth groups. And Seeds is an organization in Traverse City that has this group of people that are eager to learn landscaping, carpentry, siding, any kind of the trades. And we feel like that is something that we can actually promote with Homestretch to make for a more of a complete go-around package. But, we build affordable housing, but during the process, we use this group. We're actually promoting economic development. Every time you put a building someplace, there's a whole myriad of people and money that's spent that flows into the community. So it's not just a one-year installation. It's longer than that. It's carrying people's lives forward, not only the people that build it, but the people that live inside. So I'm promoting this project and every project that we can come across, and I'd like to see more of these in Leelanau County, in all the counties surrounding Grand Traverse. So there's my card, and that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I hope we can have a dialogue about this. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just 1 second.
Good. Hello, John.
Okay, all right. Let me get everybody back on the page here. Leah. Stuck. This page. I got one, but I can't get back into.
Before we were getting.
We can see the screen, John, and we can hear you.
Okay,
With the side thing?
no, I want to get out of here and go to discussion.
Well, no, if you could, I think we could hear you.
Oh.
I think the best thing is keep it up because people may have questions about your slides. Could you go back to the rendering of the finished product?
I can't even get,
Still looking at your business card.
yeah.
It froze up.
All right. Well, let's do this.
Here's the window.
Let's continue on. And so with time being of limited, so I've got some people's questions here. And then we can also verbalize in just a moment. But let me capture those, some questions I had as well as others that were on the screen. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. And then you can have somebody there help try to work on your AV need. Because we would like to, I think, see the slides or some information we may want to look at it. So one of the questions that came out was, well, who takes care of maintenance and is it part-time, full-time, et cetera? From what I understand from Monday is that you've incorporated a budget that would be contracted out. Now, it could be one of the tenants, right? If they wanted a part-time job, but it would be like a typical apartment in the rent, everything is included and you budgeted for that to occur. Is that correct? All right, we got them on, now we don't hear them. Oh,
Sorry.
You were too far over?
now we can hear you. John, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Now I can. So could you respond back to the point of what is your plan for maintenance, both like landscaping as well as just for general upkeep of the property?
Okay, well, we actually do manage the Crewmont Pines Housing Association. That's a condominium complex in Lake Leelanau. There are 8 units there that were developed by Leelanau Reach, and we contract with the local guys to do the landscaping and the snow plowing. So out of that 5,000 per unit per year, part of their services are paid through that, and they are, JP Landscaping, I think, is one of the operators, and they do the mowing of the lawns. We actually annually look at their bids. We put it out to bid every year. A lot of times we'll stick with them, but sometimes they'll increase their price and we'll ask them what's going on, and we might put it out to bid to somebody else. We use local plumbers to do the servicing. But you asked about could a tenant, if they wanted to, do some of the maintenance? The answer is yes. And in fact, we have a tenant right now on 8th Street in our new complex that is asking, can he do it? He's somewhat disabled, but he lives there 100% of the time. He takes care of all the other residents. He's sort of our eyes and ears. I told him, I said, you can do our maintenance. If you want to mow the lawn and you want to plow the parking lot and clear the snow off the sidewalks, you can do that, but you need a liability insurance policy.
Right, exactly.
And you have to act as a sole proprietor or put together an LLC. And lo and behold, he's actually going through the process of doing that right now. and we've agreed to a price, and it's comparable, actually a little bit less than what we're paying right now. So by all means, if there was a tenant there that was inclined and they had that ability and they were insured, let's do it. I mean, we want to help people. We're not here to not help.
I appreciate the depth of your response. I think what we need to do, because of time, we lost a lot of time, is just think about being a little bit shorter, if you don't mind, just a little bit of feedback, because we've got a lot of questions, I think, that I want to make sure we have a quick response to all of them. Another thing is this idea of affordable housing is brand new to me, so I'm still learning about it. But basically, you are able to, someone wants to live here, but they make $40,000 a year, $20 an hour, which is actually a lot of people are making $20 an hour or less. My example, I can tell you that for many of the grocery stores, they're making between $14 to maybe $16 an hour for the people who are restocking your shelves. Our shelves is an example. So if they came to you, how would this work for them so that they could move into your apartment and only have 30% of their income go? Who makes up the other amount?
Well, that speaks again to that housing choice voucher, if they were able to get one awarded to them from the Traverse City Housing Commission. Or it speaks to if we were able to get a project-based voucher from the Housing Commission or through HUD. As far as I know, there are no requests for proposals of developments for project-based vouchers. So they're in a tight spot to be able to do that. But out of the, I'd say 60% of the units at Marek Road or the Vineyard View project, we would be able to house them in that we have, 6 units that would meet their income qualifications.
Okay. So let me try to understand that. So you're saying is that basically there's a federal tax program that they could apply to. They would then get a voucher that would pay for the difference that allows them to move into your apartment and continue working in our community or start working in our community. And because of our high housing costs, they'd be supplemented so that they could work, have 30% of their income go towards housing. They're paying rent. It's not free, but it's affordable. Is that a good summary?
That is a good summary. And I would direct anybody, and we do every day, Leah and I tell them to call these jurisdictions where they're available for the housing choice vouchers. The problem has been is that housing choice vouchers are fluctuating. You get 3 months to use your voucher to move into a property. If you don't find a property in 3 months, you either extend your voucher for 1 month or you lose the voucher and it goes to somebody else. And that's the revolving problem that we have. There's just not enough units out there that are taking housing vouchers, or just not enough units in, at all.
Right. Let's move on. A question is your organization owns the project, right?
100%.
So you own it for 20 years, I understand. And then what happens to it? Who owns it at that point?
Well, we'd continue to, and if we have investment capital into the project that wants to be pulled out at year 15, we're going to ask them if they would be able to extend that for another 5 years, because our compliance with the county land bank is 20 years. So we are guaranteeing that we're going to keep it affordable 20 years, and that'll be written in with our investment agreements, which it already has been. But beyond that, if we can refinance, pay off those investors at year 20, we're going to continue to keep the same debt, keep the same product, and within the same AMI schedule, and keep it affordable. We're not looking to flip these properties at all.
Okay. Now, you're a fairly similar age man as I am, but reality is that we're both aging, John. 20 years from now could be something else. So what happens then? Who owns the project after 20 years?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm going to be around forever, and I'm not that old, actually, Phil. I'm pretty young. But it would be my responsibility to bring on somebody to replace me. So when I become whatever age I decide not to continue to work, I better have somebody in place to hand over to my board that can take over the organization. That's something that I think is my responsibility. And I think the board's going to expect that. So the Community Housing Development Organization that was founded in '96 is committed to long-term. If for some unforeseen reason that didn't happen, the state would most likely take over most of Homestretch's property, because most of our funding has come from MISTA, and they would take those properties back and operate them in some other similar fashion.
Right.
That's the best way to put it.
Okay. The element of projects, can you talk about what other projects Homestretch has done since 1996 in the area of Traverse City?
Yeah, I'd say about 150 units of single family detached homes, and then about 25 condominiums, all for sale and attached with a deed restriction that keeps those homes affordable for 99 years. And if there is a sale, there's an equity split that's gives the owner a fair return on their investment. But there is a 24 unit supportive housing project that we own at Keystone that's managed by a different management company. That was a low income housing tax credit project. We have quite a sizable equity in that. It will be turning over at year 15 in another 2 years. And I spoke with our syndicator, and it's our desire to continue the way it is. So they will pull out and we will re-syndicate that project for another 15 years. I'd say we're at about 26, almost 30 units in our portfolio of managed properties by Homestretch. My goal when I started 4 years ago was to double that. And I'm on the path to doing it. I'm slipping a little bit in the years, but I think we'll be able to double it probably by 2026, somewhere in that area. And if I can get bigger projects and get more funding, I could triple that number in our portfolio and really sustain Homestretch.
Okay. The question is, there is a wait list for vouchers though, right? So even if we could build this thing, it's not going to fulfill all the vouchers that people have that they're holding right now that they can move in. Is that true?
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. Now, can the restriction for the tenants here, can it be that they have, what are the restrictions? Do they, beyond income, do they, do they have to work in Leelanau County, in the local area?
Well, our tenant selection criteria will identify those coming from the county and within the county. I mean, it's our written agreement with the township, because they granted us the pilot, that we will give preference to Leelanau County residents. And being the owner of the property, we, based on our selection criteria, can pick and choose. Primarily, the biggest part of it is based on income and the ability to pay, in a track record of payment with other landlords or other situations. But you don't have to be employed. You could have Social Security income. You could have pension income. You could be somebody that sold a big home and has money in the bank that's generating $25,000 or $30,000 a year in interest. That's fine. There's many retired people in that situation that we cater to. So don't just put us in the category of catering to employed people. There's a lot of seniors that, and you saw that in our slide deck. There's quite a few seniors in that category.
Wonderful. Wayne, I specifically would like to turn over any other questions. I've got a few more, but I want to make sure yours are addressed because you're the most familiar with from our missions team on these topics. Can you come off mute and ask any other questions that you have?
Phil, I've already put them on the chat.
Yes, and I've asked those. Are there any others that you have?
No, I guess my concern, and I don't know that John can really do anything about it in the world we live in, but I don't know why. I mean, my personal goal about these kinds of things is that this should be affordable in perpetuity. And I think we've all seen things that happened in Traverse City with developers that came and said, it'll be affordable. And then 5 years later, it's flipped. And it sounds like we're out 20 years, which is good, but 20 years is going to flash by, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I agree. But look at Homestretch since 1996. If you were back in 96 and said, well, 20 years from now, we're going to lose this property, we're still here. We're still running and operating in it. And I would be hard pressed to see Homestretch fold and go the market rate route or what have you. But I think longevity of Homestretch is testimony to what your concern is, not just for 20 years, but most of our mortgages are written for 45 years, in fact, with the state.
Let me ask that question in another way. Have any of your early projects ended up going market rate?
Zero, none whatsoever.
Okay, good.
And we are a nonprofit. We're not in it to flip properties. We're in it to pay ourselves and keep our business doors open and help people. That's what motivates us.
I will ask this question because you answered it on Monday. And it made me cringe on Monday, but since it's been asked publicly, I'm going to ask it again for this group. I mean, obviously with the real estate things, I mean, the developers are making all the money, a lot of money. And so John, you must be making a lot of money. What do you make per year, John? What do you pay yourself?
Well, I'm pleased to say I make $96,000 a year. And when I first hired on, I asked them to pay me $140,000 a year. They beat me up down to $75,000, and I've done such a fantastic job that they've given me a raise to where I'm at right now. And I have 4 children. I have a household. I have a wife. I have all the expenses, and every penny of that is absorbed, and I have a little bit for savings. But the amount of work I put into it, I think I'm worth more. But I'm taking what I have. We have about $170,000 annual budget, and salaries make up, I would say, 80% of that budget. We pay $500 a month for renting an office at the Traverse City Governmental Center. We run a tight ship. We really do. So that's our budget. That's where I'm at. But that's how much I make.
Right. And that question came from the Legal Council after a pretty robust discussion. And then, there are some who, vouched for Homestretch. And at that point, they approved $125,000 again towards this project. So I don't see any other questions. I have a couple more I'm going to throw out here, though. The gap that I wrote down is $147,000. That's a lot of money, but that's not $1.7 million. It's $147,000. Now I understand that they are going to go. They asked you to go to the Bingham or Suttons Bay township level to seek additional funding, right? On Monday.
Mm-hmm.
What is your plan to do that? And when will you think you'll be able to know if they are going to contribute anything?
Well, I would ask to be put on the agenda first. And I think I need to get a hold of the commissioners to do that. I'm leery of that being fruitful because they don't have a path yet to doling out their funds. I think the county is ahead of the curve, but if I get on the agenda and I get that amount, I'd say by June we'd be in good shape, but I have my doubts.
Well, my point is that you went to the county asking for the entire amount, I believe, and they did not grant you the entire amount because they have other priorities like broadband, et cetera, which I heard the discussion, but they did contribute $125,000, right? Dedicated towards the effort. LCN, which based, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that was founded in our church's closet, if you will. Mary Stanton is a member with Steve of our church. And so LCN has, again, designated $250,000 towards this effort, and have done a lot of vetting. Bob Hetler here is on the board of LCN, I understand, right, Bob? Shake your head. So, yeah. And so the piece is that it's been well vetted, and a lot of people continue to vet about Homestretch. This is not the solution. I agree with Wayne. I wish, we could have something in perpetuity. But even for 20 years, if this is just one nugget of the solution, here's my question, Bob. John, how many of your residents stay in the same apartment or in the same building or for 20 years?
I would say nobody that I'm aware of.
What's your average duration of people staying in a Homestretch affordable unit?
About
roughly
5 years. About
Okay.
5 years.
So my view is this, much like my kids, much like myself, I came out of college, I moved into an apartment. I didn't move into my forever home, right? These people, we want them to get out of affordable housing, don't we?
We do.
So we have-
Well, and we promote them to move up into a home that they own on their own, whether it's a Homestretch home or not. We even have a fund given to us by Huntington Bank that allows us to pay for their tuition. So if one of our tenants wants to get their teaching credential or become a certified nurse, we'll actually help pay for that from this fund given to us by Huntington Bank. That's the deep dive into helping our tenants. But we do have some elderly people that have been with us for, I think Mary Levitt's been with us for 10 years. Right? And so, you know, there will be people that are longer than that 5, but on average, it's about 5 to 6 years.
So here's my point, way I look at the math, and that is, if we have 8 units over 20 years, each one, let's say they use 5 years, 8 times 4 is, 40 families, not people, 40 families. Some will be single, some will be married, etc., will be touched by this project over the next 20 years, based on your experience today. Does that math make sense?
That's feasible. That I agree to that. Yeah.
So 40 families, the demographics that you shared with me, some of those families will have child age children. They'll be in our schools. They'll be in our churches. They'll be looking for new jobs. My guess is most of the people over age 50, many of them are not going to be retired. They're going to have working retirements the way many of us do. And they're going to be contributing and working and servicing. We don't have heavy construction here in the county. They're all service jobs for the most part. So they're going to be servicing our community. And when I've thought about this, you're looking at 40 families that are going to be touched and given not a handout, but a hand up. And so to me, I know, Wayne, I think you raise a great question. Boy, this is not into perpetuity, but to me, this is at least a part of the solution. Now, have you presented, what I'm noticing, looking at, the people we did try to pull in through the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, some businesses. And one of the elements is the people who are going to most benefit having some affordable housing, some federal funds to help provide housing, are the employers, is one of the critiques that I have heard about this concept. And they also should be basically helping us fill this gap. What employers over the years have you had, employers that have embraced this and said, yeah, we want to be participatory in the solution? Or even the owners of those companies that may have had a private donation, have you had people do that?
We haven't. I think most of our efforts have been focused on fighting NIMBYism and getting our developments approved in smaller communities that are against affordable housing. And then the rest of our time, once we get that approval, is going after the grants and the foundations and the money that's out there, and that absorbs a huge amount of time. And we usually underwrite our unit mix based on what the grant providers ask for. So I tell you, I did reach out to 9 Bean Rose, and I did look at the county website and the newspaper and called a couple of businesses that were hiring, but I didn't get the strong response that I thought I would have. And I think there's a stigmatism against affordable housing that people just don't want to have a part of. And that just speaks to another hill that we have to climb on top of all the other hurdles that we have to go through. I'll just put the units wherever I can and fill them with the people that I know that need the housing. And if employers want to participate and approach us, we've been here, we'll welcome them and help them if they have a specific employee that needs to be housed. We would gladly work with them. And we don't need their money, but we need their support. And it could be in the form of going to the meetings where we're trying to achieve zoning, so we don't get kicked out of town.
Wonderful. I don't have anyone's any other questions. Well, I'm just gonna, people want to come off mute. Is there anyone who would like to say something or comment, et cetera, as we close this up?
Here we have somebody in the audience.
Can you repeat the question after it's asked, John?
The question is asking about migrant workers or families that have been here for quite some time that have been able to get a social security card and actually been part of the community all this time. The answer is yes. In fact, we're selling a unit locally to a gentleman that does not have citizenship, but he has a social security card and he has a USIG number. So legally, we can, based on federal law, give him federal grants. So it is, and it was kind of shocking to me at first, but non-citizens that have a stake in the community with these credentials can benefit from the grants that we have, and it's legal. Sure.
Any other questions from the congregation, from the people there, John, or elsewhere?
I think it's just kind of going into a little bit of a discussion, and maybe after we sign off on Zoom, I might meet with them briefly. Is there anybody else who want to say anything at this point? I think we're in good shape, Phil. I think we've done it. We're at 5:25 right now.
Okay, so I was hoping we would be able to have this a concise presentation. I apologize for the AV issues. And I think that the best thing we can do is maybe we do a brief video of just you doing the video. Maybe Beth could provide it and the slides, and you post it on your Homestretch page, John.
You
so
know,
that we have this in a concise area.
I agree. We did post the Board of Commissioners special meeting from Monday on our website if anybody wanted to view that.
Good. And then the $147,000, I think that is something that, at least from a mission committee standpoint, we will, discuss this for at least our church. And, potentially, hopefully, you can move forward also at the county level. I think this is personally an opportunity, again, not 1.7 million, but every contribution can make a difference, and every contribution to this effort for those 40 families, we can stand up and say, we helped create a solution if we participate. I'm not the decision maker. We have lots of people, John, that we need to have their inputs. And that's just my personal ones. I need to have our mission committee. And by the way, I have brought comments to them and they have said, no, there's other directions we want to focus on, which is very fair. But I really appreciate your time. I think it's been concise. There's a lot of information out there. If you guys, people want to see it and review it. And of course, please don't bring it to me because I don't have any answers. Okay. It's really to Beth identifying, are these needs really there? And it's to John saying, is this solution one that works and is credible? So I just want to say thank you. And thank you everybody for showing your interest.
You're welcome. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.